The digital chronometer on the dashboard read 02:17:44 a.m. From his position in the darkened Opel van, parked 300 meters down a rain-slicked street in Berlin's Moabit district, Ariel could see the target's fourth-floor window. For the past 6 hours, it had been a single, unwavering square of yellow light against the pre-dawn gloom. Now, it was dark. The target, a man known only as the courier, had finally gone to sleep. Ariel let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. His instructions were clear: observe and report. Do not engage. Do not approach. The target was low level, a cog in a machine they were just beginning to understand. But at 02:18:12 a.m., the protocol shattered. The light in the fourth-floor window flicked back on. Not just the one light, every light in the apartment. Ariel's blood ran cold. This wasn't someone getting a glass of water. This was a signal, or a purge. He watched, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, as the target moved frantically from room to room, silhouetted against the windows. Then, a new light appeared. The flickering, aggressive orange of a small fire, growing rapidly in the center of the living room. The courier was destroying evidence. Ariel's secure comms unit, a device disguised as a cheap MP3 player, buzzed once. A single text message from his handler in Tel Aviv, Dalia, appeared on the tiny screen. Status? He had seconds to decide. If he reported the fire, the German authorities, the Feuerwehr and Polizei, would be on the scene in minutes. They would collect whatever evidence wasn't consumed by the flames, and it would disappear into the labyrinthine bureaucracy of the Bundesnachrichtendienst, the BND. Mossad would lose its only lead. If he did nothing, the fire would consume everything. The lead would turn to ash. There was a third option, an option that was not in the mission file, not authorized, not even contemplated. To go in, alone, to intercept the target before he could flee and before the authorities could arrive. To break every rule of modern intelligence, gathering for the slimmest chance of recovering whatever the courier was so desperate to destroy. His thumb hovered over the keypad. Reporting fire would be the safe, correct choice. Reporting intervening would be career suicide, and potentially much worse. The orange glow in the window intensified, licking at the ceiling. The silhouette of the man vanished from the window. He was making a run for it. Ariel typed a single word and sent it. Inbound. He killed the van's engine, grabbed the go bag from the passenger seat, and melted into the shadows of the Berlin street. The operation, codenamed Iron Candlestick, had just gone irrevocably off script. The single-word message from Ariel detonated in the center of the David Elazar Intelligence Campus, the heavily fortified heart of Mossad headquarters north of Tel Aviv. Dalia Cohen, head of the agency's European department, stared at the word inbound projected on the main operations screen. It was 3:19 a.m. local time, and the sterile quiet of the command center was shattered. Dalia was a legend within the agency, a woman who had risen through the ranks not through field heroics, but through an almost supernatural ability to see patterns in chaos. Her defining achievement was the dismantling of a vast Hezbollah financial network in the tri-border area of South America. While others saw a confusing mess of hawala transfers, currency exchanges, and shell corporations, Dalia saw a spider's web. Over 18 months, she had patiently mapped every strand, never moving until she could predict not just where the money was, but where it was going next. She identified the linchpin, a diamond merchant in Ciudad del Este, and with a single targeted cyber operation that drained his accounts and exposed his ledgers, the entire network collapsed in 72 hours. Her skill was strategic patience, the antithesis of Ariel's impulsive action. Now, her best field agent was operating blind and unauthorized in a city teeming with rival intelligence services. On the screen to her left, a video feed flickered to life. Benzian Ben Levi, the head of Unit 8200's Signal Intelligence Division assigned to this op, looked out from his own bunker in the Negev desert. Ben was a prodigy, a ghost who lived in the electromagnetic spectrum. His masterpiece was Starlight, a piece of malware so elegant it had resided undetected in a rival nation's primary military communications satellite for 3 years, siphoning off its command and control data. Ben's team didn't just break codes, they made the enemy's own systems do the work for them. His voice was calm, clinical. "Dahlia, I have him. He's moving east on foot. Heart rate is 145 BPM, respiration elevated. He's running. I have no audio, no video. Just his biometric telemetry from the subcutaneous sensor." Dahlia's eyes narrowed. "Where are the local authorities?" Ben's fingers flew across a keyboard. "A civilian called in the fire 90 seconds ago. First fire engine is dispatched. ETA 4 minutes. Polizei patrol car 6 minutes. 4 minutes. In a city like Berlin, that was an eternity." The third key figure in the operation was Ariel, the Katza on the ground. A former Sayeret Matkal commando, Ariel possessed a rare combination of physical prowess and deep-cover tradecraft. His specialty was infiltration. His legend was cemented during Operation Trojan Horse in the Balkans, where a Serbian arms dealer was supplying Iranian proxies. For 6 months, Ariel posed as a disaffected Russian art dealer, slowly building a relationship with the target's inner circle. He didn't just learn the target's habits. He learned his passions, his vices, his fears. He became the man's confidant, his drinking buddy, the one person he trusted. The operation culminated not in a raid, but with Ariel sitting across from the arms dealer, sharing a bottle of 25-year-old scotch, as he calmly explained that all of his assets were frozen and his entire network was being rolled up. The man was in custody before he finished his glass. Ariel's gift was his chameleon-like ability to become whatever the situation required. Tonight, it required him to be a ghost. The final and most important player was a ghost of a different kind, a man known only as the Berlin Architect. He was the reason for Iron Candlestick. He was the target Dahlia was hunting, the whisper Ben was listening for, and the threat Ariel was risking his life to find. The chessboard on which this game was being played was not just Berlin, it was the entire European continent. For 2 years, a shadow war had been escalating. After a string of high-profile defeats in the Middle East, Hezbollah, with renewed funding and direction from Iran's Quds force, had shifted its strategy. The new doctrine was one of 1,000 cuts. Small-scale, deniable attacks in the West designed to sow chaos and bleed its enemies far from the front lines. The timeline of escalation was chillingly clear. In May 2023, French authorities narrowly foiled a plot to bomb a Parisian synagogue, discovering 50 kilograms of triacetone triperoxide, TATP, in an apartment in the 18th arrondissement. The operatives escaped. In September 2023, an attempt to assassinate a dissident Saudi journalist in Rome was thwarted when the hitman's car was involved in a random traffic accident. The weapon, a silenced pistol with a custom-made subsonic round, was traced back to a batch that had gone missing from a Lebanese armed forces armory. In January 2024, Belgian police arrested a cell in Brussels that was planning to use weaponized drones to attack the EU Commission headquarters. They were caught only because one of them bragged to an undercover agent. In each case, the operatives were either ghosts or amateurs who got lucky. The leaders remained in the shadows. The intelligence picture was a mosaic of failures and near misses. But a pattern was emerging, a signature of sophisticated planning combined with disposable, often incompetent, local assets. This pointed to a central command and control figure orchestrating the chaos from a safe distance. A hub. The BND, MI6, the DGSE. All were hunting for this hub, but they were looking in the wrong places. They were focused on the traditional Hezbollah strongholds in the Middle East and Africa. Mossad, however, believed the hub was in Europe itself. The genesis of Operation Iron Candlestick was a classic intelligence failure that morphed into a terrifying realization. In March 2024, a trusted Mossad informant, a mid-level functionary within Hezbollah's internal security apparatus in Beirut, was compromised. Before he went dark, he managed to pass one final, fragmented message. It was a recording of a conversation, heavily corrupted, with only a few audible phrases. The shipment is clean. The architect approves, and the bird is ready to fly in Berlin. The informant's body was found in a ditch outside Beirut a week later. The failure was losing a valuable asset. The terrifying realization was the content of his final message. The phrase, "the Berlin architect," became an obsession within Mossad headquarters. It suggested a level of operational planning on German soil that was previously thought impossible. The German government, haunted by its history and desperate to maintain social cohesion, had a notoriously light touch with suspected extremist groups, prioritizing observation over confrontation. This policy, born of good intentions, had turned cities like Berlin into a perfect incubator for sleeper cells. Hezbollah operatives, disguised as refugees, students, or businessmen, could live and work with minimal scrutiny. The mission was born from this single cryptic phrase. The problem was clear: find and identify the Berlin architect and his plan before the bird was ready to fly. The initial search was fruitless. There was no digital trail, no chatter, no known high-level operative in the city. So Dahlia authorized a high-risk, low-tech approach. Identify every known Hezbollah sympathizer and low-level money mover in Berlin, and put them under 24/7 physical surveillance. It was a brute force tactic, a massive drain on resources. For 3 months, they watched dozens of targets, logging every meeting, every phone call, every trip to the grocery store. It was mind-numbingly dull, until one of the targets, a man who ran a small kebab shop in Neukölln, made a single, anomalous dead drop. He left a newspaper on a park bench. 10 minutes later, another man picked it up. That man was the courier. He was a clean skin, no criminal record, no known affiliations, a Lebanese national in Germany on a student visa. He was invisible. He was perfect. And Ariel was tasked to be his shadow. Ariel moved through the pre-dawn streets like a wraith. His go-bag contained not weapons, but tools of the trade. A lockpick set, a miniature fiber-optic camera, a frequency jammer, and a sterile evidence collection kit. He circled the block, approaching the building from the rear, avoiding the main street where the fire engines would arrive. The building was a classic Berlin Altbau, with a courtyard in the back. He scaled a low brick wall, landing silently on the damp cobblestones. The back entrance to the building's stairwell was an old, heavy wooden door. The lock was a joke, a simple wafer mechanism he bypassed in under 10 seconds. Inside, the stairwell smelled of boiled cabbage and damp plaster. He took the stairs two at a time, his soft-soled shoes making no sound. He heard a siren in the distance, growing closer. Dahlia's voice, transmitted via a subcutaneous transponder in his jaw, was a calm whisper in his ear. Fire Department ETA 90 seconds. You have no time, Ariel. As he reached the fourth-floor landing, the smell of smoke was thick. The door to the target's apartment was ajar. A rookie mistake. The courier was in a panic. Ariel drew a thin, flexible fiber-optic camera from his bag, slid it through the gap, and scanned the room. The apartment was trashed. In the center of the living room, a pile of documents and at least one laptop were burning fiercely in a metal basin. There was no sign of the courier. Ariel slipped inside, closing the door behind him. The smoke was acrid, stinging his eyes. He moved to the fire, using a small, telescoping fireproof rod to poke at the burning debris. Most of it was ash, but he saw it. A corner of a passport, the lamination peeling from the heat, the edge of a photograph still visible. He expertly plucked it from the flames with a pair of tweezers and dropped it into a sterile evidence bag. He then saw the laptop. It was half melted, the plastic casing bubbling. The hard drive was likely destroyed. But beside it, also burning, was a small metallic object, a USB drive. It was already partially melted into the laptop's casing. He had one chance. Ignoring the heat, he jammed a pry tool from his kit under the drive, levering it free. The plastic sizzled against his gloved fingers. He dropped the scorched drive into a second evidence bag. Ariel, police are on scene. Dahlia's voice crackled. They're entering the building. You need to be gone. Now. He scanned the room one last time. A window leading to a fire escape was open. He was about to move toward it when he saw something on the floor, partially hidden under a rug. A second phone. Not a burner, but a modern smartphone, seemingly untouched. It was a trap. Too obvious. The courier had left it as a decoy, knowing anyone who found it would waste precious time trying to crack it. But as Ariel looked closer, he saw it wasn't just lying there. A single, almost invisible thread was tied to the phone, running under the rug toward the doorway. A tripwire. Not for an explosive, but for an alarm. It was a silent alarm, designed to ping the courier's real phone the moment the decoy was moved. The courier wasn't just fleeing, he was hunting his hunters. He wanted to know if he was being followed. Ariel smiled. This man was good. He backed away from the phone, slipped out the open window onto the fire escape, and descended into the courtyard just as the heavy boots of the German police pounded up the main stairwell. He was back on the street and blended into the cityscape a full minute before the first patrol car sealed the block. He had the scorched passport fragment and the half-melted USB drive. It wasn't much, but it was more than they had an hour ago. The game had changed. The technology deployed for Iron Candlestick was a testament to Unit 8200's prowess, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in urban surveillance. The half-melted USB drive was useless to anyone else, but Ben's lab in the Negev was not just anyone else. The drive's internal chip was cracked and warped, its solder points fused. Ben's team didn't try to repair it. Instead, they used a process called chip-off forensics. The memory chip was physically shaved down, layer by microscopic layer, with a precision laser. After each layer was removed, an electron microscope scanned the exposed circuitry, digitally reconstructing the stored data bit by bit. It was the digital equivalent of archaeology, and it took 72 agonizing hours. The result was a partial data recovery. Most of the files were corrupted, but they retrieved two things of immense value. The first was a series of encrypted calendar entries. The second was a complex algorithm, a piece of custom encryption software. It was a key, but without the lock, it was useless. Meanwhile, Dalia's analysts in Tel Aviv worked on the scorched passport fragment. Using multispectral imaging, they were able to enhance the heat-damaged photograph and text. The passport was Syrian, the name was fake, but the face was now in their database. They ran it through their global facial recognition system, a program codenamed Zofit, which scraped billions of images from social media, visa applications, and CCTV footage. After 12 hours of processing, Zofit found a match. Not from a government database, but from a tourist's Instagram photo taken 2 years prior at a cafe in Tehran. The man from the passport was in the background, talking to a known Quds Force logistics officer. This was their first concrete link between the Berlin operation and Iran. The courier wasn't just a Hezbollah sympathizer. He was a professional with direct ties to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. Now, they had to find him. This is where Ben's most audacious tool came into play. Knowing the courier was technically sophisticated, they assumed he would be using a new, clean burner phone. Finding one phone in a city of 3.7 million people is impossible. So Ben didn't look for the phone. He looked for the man. Every human being has a unique biometric signature, a gait defined by the rhythm and cadence of their walk. Months earlier, Ariel had managed to capture 30 seconds of high-resolution video of the courier walking down a street. This data was fed into a Mossad AI program that created a unique gait profile. Ben's team then gained clandestine access to the CCTV network, covering Berlin's public transportation system, the BVG. They didn't watch the video. They fed the raw data stream directly to the AI, which analyzed the gait of every single person captured on thousands of cameras in real time. It was a staggering computational task. For 5 days, the system returned nothing. The courier had gone to ground. But Dalia had predicted this. She knew the courier's profile suggested a man who was both paranoid and arrogant. He wouldn't be able to resist checking if he was being followed. On the 6th day, the AI threw up an alert, a 97.8% gait match. A man had entered the U-Bahn station at Alexanderplatz, stood on the platform for 2 minutes, watched the crowds, then left without boarding a train. It was classic counter-surveillance. He was checking for a tail. Now they had him. The system tracked him to an apartment building in the wedding district. The building was also home to a large Islamic cultural center. It was the perfect cover. Getting eyes and ears inside was the next problem. The center was known to be sensitive to outsiders. Any overt surveillance would be spotted immediately. So Ben deployed the mosquitoes. These were microscopic drones, no larger than a grain of rice, designed with flapping wings to mimic an insect's flight. They had a battery life of only 15 minutes, but they carried a high-resolution camera and microphone. Ariel, posing as a city worker checking gas meters in the alley behind the building, released 3 of them. One was lost to a gust of wind. Another was swatted by a man smoking a cigarette. But the third made it through an open window into the cultural center's main office. For 12 precious minutes, they had a live feed. What they saw was chilling. The office was a logistical hub. Maps of Berlin were on the walls, with key infrastructure points circled. The Hauptbahnhof Central Station, The Tegel Airport, still operating for government flights. A major electrical substation. And sitting at a desk, directing two other men, was not the courier. It was a new face. A man with an air of authority, his movements precise and economical. The AI ran a facial recognition scan. This time, there was no need for Instagram photos. The man was in their database, flagged with the highest threat level. His name was Hassan al-Masri. He was a senior Hezbollah explosives expert and operational planner, a man they thought was in Lebanon. He was the Berlin architect. The discovery of Hassan al-Masri in Berlin escalated the operation to a crisis point. This was no longer about a potential attack. It was a certainty. The only questions were when and where. The pressure from the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem was immense, but Dalia held her ground. Moving in now, arresting al-Masri, would be a victory, but an incomplete one. They had the architect, but they didn't have his blueprints. They needed to know the target. The plan now shifted to total, unrelenting surveillance on the cultural center and al-Masri himself. But a major complication arose, a problem Dalia had feared from the start. The BND, Germany's Foreign Intelligence Service, was not blind. Their own signals intelligence had picked up the anomalous data traffic from Mossad's operations. They didn't know who it was, but they knew someone was running a major, unauthorized intelligence operation on their soil. A memo, leaked to Mossad by a friendly source within the German Chancellery, revealed that the BND's counterintelligence unit had been activated. Their top priority, to identify and neutralize the foreign agents. Suddenly, Ariel wasn't just the hunter, he was also the hunted. Black sedans with diplomatic plates began appearing near his observation posts. His clean cover as a graduate student was subjected to a background check by the university, instigated by a routine inquiry from the authorities. One morning, Ariel returned to his safe house to find a microscopic dusting of UV powder on the doorknob. A classic counterintelligence trick to see if a location has been entered. The BND was closing in. Dalia made a difficult choice. Ariel had to go dark. All active surveillance was suspended. He was to move to a deep cover emergency safe house and cease all communication. The team in Tel Aviv was now blind. For 72 critical hours, they had no eyes on al-Masri. The tension in the command center was unbearable. Dalia used the time to engage in a delicate game of shadows with her German counterparts. Through a trusted back channel, she fed the BND a piece of high-grade, verifiable intelligence about a fictional Chechen arms smuggling ring operating in Hamburg. She included details so specific, bank account numbers, shipping container IDs, that the BND would have to divert significant resources to investigate. It was a calculated risk. If they saw through the deception, Mossad's position would be untenable. But if they took the bait, it would give Ariel the breathing room he needed. The gamble paid off. BND resources were visibly diverted north. The black sedans disappeared from Berlin. The hunt for Ariel was called off, replaced by the hunt for non-existent Chechens. But they had lost 3 days. Just as the BND threat receded, a second crisis erupted. When they re-established surveillance, they discovered al-Masri had changed his patterns. He was no longer using the cultural center as his base. He had moved. The courier, who had led them to him, was gone, likely spirited out of the country. Al-Masri was now operating out of a small, nondescript import-export business in an industrial park in Marzahn. He had become a ghost again, and they had no listening devices inside his new location. Worse, Ben's team discovered the new building was shielded. It had been retrofitted with a sophisticated radio frequency blocking mesh in the walls, making remote electronic eavesdropping impossible. Al-Masri knew he had been under some form of surveillance and had adapted. He had cut off his old location and built a fortress. This was a catastrophic failure. The mission was on the verge of collapse. Desperate, Dahlia ordered a review of all the data they had. Ben went back to the one piece of evidence they hadn't been able to use. The custom encryption algorithm recovered from the courier's melted USB drive. It was a key without a lock. Ben's team began to theorize. What if the lock wasn't a file, but a signal? What if the algorithm was designed to decrypt a specific type of encoded broadcast? They began scanning the entire radio spectrum over Berlin, from low-frequency bands to microwave satellite uplinks. They ran every encrypted signal they found through the recovered algorithm. For 48 hours, they found nothing. Then, a junior analyst had a breakthrough. He suggested looking not at professional intelligence or military broadcasts, but at commercial ones. He theorized that a sophisticated operative would hide his signal in plain sight. They focused on the vast amount of digital noise generated by the city. On the third day, they found it. It was hidden in the sub-carrier of a popular Turkish-language commercial radio station. Buried beneath the pop music and advertisements was a stream of encrypted data, broadcast for only 60 seconds at the top of each hour. When they applied the courier's algorithm to the signal, the data unscrambled. It was a stream of numbers, not coordinates, not codes, financial data, stock market trades. For hours, Dahlia and her team stared at the numbers, trying to understand their meaning. They looked like random transactions on the Frankfurt Stock Exchange. But Dahlia, the master of financial networks, saw the pattern. The trades weren't random. They were a code. The quantity of shares being traded, the specific price point down to the fourth decimal, the time of the transaction. It was all a message. A one-time pad cipher communicated through the public stock market. It was brilliant, untraceable, anonymous. It took her team another 24 hours to crack the logic. The decrypted messages were terrifyingly mundane. Ammonium nitrate shipment confirmed. Wiring components acquired. Rendezvous set for 48 hours. They were building a bomb. A large one. The final message was the one that froze Dahlia's blood. It was a single stock trade decoded to 2 words. Brandenburg Gate. The target was the symbol of a unified Germany. A site teeming with thousands of tourists and civilians every day. And the attack was in less than 48 hours. The time for surveillance was over. The mission parameters shifted instantly from intelligence gathering to direct action. Dahlia presented the findings to the Prime Minister. The decision was made in minutes. The risk of a diplomatic incident was now secondary to the risk of a mass casualty event. Mossad's most elite and clandestine unit, Kidon, the Bayonet, was activated. A 6-man team boarded an unmarked executive jet at a military airfield in southern Israel. Their cover was a group of German businessmen returning from a conference. Their luggage contained not business suits, but the specialized tools of their trade. But as the Kidon team was en route, Ben's signal analysts intercepted one last stock market message. It was logged at 21:30 Berlin time. When decrypted, it changed everything. The message was a single address, an abandoned warehouse in an industrial park near the Schönefeld airport. Dahlia stared at the screen, her mind racing. The Brandenburg Gate message was a deception. It was a classic misdirection, designed to send German authorities scrambling to the city center while the real operation took place elsewhere. The new location, a warehouse by an airport, suggested a different, more horrifying target. not a landmark, but an airliner. The timeline compressed to minutes. The Kidon team's flight was diverted in midair, their landing slot at Tegel canceled. They would land at Schönefeld, the airport right next to the target. There was no time to wait for German cooperation. This would be a unilateral action on foreign soil. 22:15. Berlin time. The Kidon team, now kitted out in sterile, unmarked tactical gear, establishes a perimeter around the sprawling, derelict warehouse. Ariel, his surveillance role over, is now their guide. He was recalled from his safe house and rendezvoused with the team, his intimate knowledge of Berlin's layout now a critical asset. He has the building's original architectural plans, acquired from the city archives days earlier, displayed on a tablet. 22:23 p.m. Thermal imaging from a drone shows 5 heat signatures inside the warehouse. They are active, moving with purpose. A 6th signature is stationary in a small office on the 2nd floor. Hassan al-Masri. 22:28 p.m. The team leader, call sign Gideon, makes a decision. A frontal assault is too risky. The targets are likely armed and could detonate any device they are building. Ariel points to a detail on the blueprints. A large-diameter industrial ventilation shaft runs from the roof directly to the center of the main warehouse floor. It's the only direct, unguarded entry point. 22:31 p.m. 2 Kidon operators are on the roof. They pry open the vent cover. It groans in protest. Below, one of the heat signatures stops moving, looking up. The team has been heard. Gideon's voice is clipped, urgent. Go. Go now. 22:32 p.m. The 2 operators rappel down the shaft, landing silently on the concrete floor. Simultaneously, the other 4 members of the team use a shaped charge to blow the main loading bay door. The sound is deafening. The raid is initiated. 22:33 p.m. Chaos. The inside of the warehouse is a bomb factory. Barrels of chemicals, wires, timers, and several partially assembled devices are scattered on workbenches. The 5 operatives, armed with handguns, open fire. The Kidon team responds with disciplined, aimed shots. Their objective is not to kill, but to neutralize. 2 targets are down in the first 5 seconds. 22:34 p.m. A 3rd operative makes a desperate run for a workbench where a complex array of wires converges on a cellular phone. The detonator. An operator from the rappel team, who had taken cover behind a stack of crates, intercepts him. The fight is short and brutal. The operative is neutralized. 22:35 p.m. From the 2nd floor office, Hassan al-Masri sees his plan collapsing. He doesn't reach for a weapon. He reaches for a laptop, his finger moving to the enter key. A dead man's switch. Ariel, who entered with the main breach team, had anticipated this. Ignoring the ongoing firefight, he had sprinted for the exterior staircase leading to the office. He bursts through the door just as al-Masri's finger descends. He tackles the Hezbollah bomb maker, sending them both crashing to the floor, away from the laptop. The struggle is desperate. Al-Masri is strong, fueled by fanaticism. Ariel is a trained fighter, but his role is brains, not brawn. He sees al-Masri pulling a small blade from his boot. As the steel flashes, a single silenced shot rings out. Gideon is standing in the doorway, his weapon smoking. Hassan al-Masri lies still. 22:37 p.m. Gideon's voice is broadcast to the command center in Tel Aviv. Yotvet, the architect is down. The package is secure. The Hebrew word for stable signals the threat is contained. The apex of the operation lasted less than 6 minutes. The aftermath was a carefully choreographed disappearing act. The Kedon team secured the bomb-making materials, photographing everything for intelligence analysis, before rendering the unstable TATP components inert. They collected all their spent casings, wiped every surface they had touched, and vanished into the night. Their executive jet was airborne and heading back to Israel before the sun rose. Ariel was the last to leave, melting back into the city to await extraction via a different route. At 1:01 a.m., Dahlia placed a call to a secure line at the BND headquarters. She didn't identify herself. She simply provided the address of the warehouse and said, "You have a problem with Islamic extremists in Marzahn. You're welcome." The official German response was muted. The Berlin police announced the discovery of a bomb-making workshop and the arrest of several individuals in a raid, framing it as the result of a long-term domestic investigation. No deaths were reported. Privately, a message of gratitude was passed from the German Chancellor's office to the Israeli Prime Minister. A potential catastrophe on German soil had been averted, and the fiction of German sovereignty had been maintained. In the media, Hezbollah vehemently denied any connection to the incident, blaming it on a Zionist plot to smear their name. The world moved on. For Mossad, the operation was a resounding success. They had identified and eliminated a master bomb maker and thwarted a major attack. But the story didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, Ben's team painstakingly analyzed the data from the hard drives, phones, and laptops recovered from the warehouse. Most of it confirmed what they already knew: technical details of bomb construction, logistics of acquiring materials, and communication protocols. But on a heavily encrypted partition of Hassan al-Masri's personal laptop, they found something that changed their entire understanding of the mission. It was a file labeled Phase 2. It was not a target list for bombings. It was a target list for assassinations. The names were a who's who of European counterterrorism leadership. The head of France's DGSI, a senior counterterrorism official in Italy's AISI. And at the top of the list, with extensive surveillance photos and a detailed daily schedule, was Günther Schmidt, the director of counterterrorism for Germany's own BND. The final, chilling twist of Operation Iron Candlestick became clear. The bombs were never the primary objective. They were a diversion. The Berlin architect's true plan was to use the panic and chaos from a large-scale bombing at an airport or landmark as cover. In the frantic hours after the attack, when security services would be overwhelmed and command structures in disarray, small, two-man hit teams, already in position across the continent, would execute the targets on the Phase 2 list. The goal was not to kill civilians. It was to decapitate the very intelligence agencies that were hunting them. It was a plan of breathtaking audacity. By stopping the bombing, the team in Berlin had unknowingly saved the lives of their counterparts in Germany, France, and Italy. They thought they were preventing one attack, but they had actually prevented the coordinated collapse of Western Europe's counter-terror apparatus. The Berlin architect wasn't just building a bomb. He was designing the checkmate move in a continental war of shadows. And Mossad had taken the queen off the board just before she could strike. The operation's legacy was not just a single victory, but a silent, uncelebrated act that prevented a decade of chaos.